Tonight, we're learning just how worried Trump is about Mueller testifying before Congress. Sources telling the Associated Press that Trump has stewed for days about media coverage that would be given to Mueller. White House officials worry his gravitas would add weight to some of the politically damaging and embarrassing material about Trump. And New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman reporting that Trump wasn't just popping off when he tweeted Mueller shouldn't testify, but in fact, for days before the tweets, he'd expressed desire to keep Mueller from testifying. That's quite an about-face from this.
Mueller testify? Would you like to see him testify?
I don't know. That's up to our Attorney General, who I think has done a fantastic job.
Yeah, now he's saying no. Well, here's where things stand tonight. Mueller has tentatively agreed to testify in 8 days on May 15th. It will be the first time the American public will hear directly from Mueller. And Trump's allies in Congress are fiercely trying to protect him. Here's Mitch McConnell today, echoing Senator Graham.
Why not call for Mueller to testify?
Because I'm not going to do any more. Enough already. It's over.
The special counsel's finding is clear. Case closed. Case closed.
But as we've seen today, the case is far from closed. And by the way, this is new video. That's Robert Mueller leaving dinner last night in Georgetown as negotiations for a possible congressional appearance continue. Joining me now, former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi. So, Gene, as a prosecutor, if there is so much concern about someone testifying that you're doing and saying everything you possibly can to keep it from happening, what does that tell you?
He is scared. And if I were President Trump, I would be scared. This could be John Dean, only John Dean wasn't the prosecutor. In all the trials I had, I was always amazed, absolutely amazed, at what a witness says in prep sessions versus how they come across in front of an audience, especially if it's a packed room. Of course, this will be a Senate or a House committee hearing room. And Donald Trump is a media master. He ran The Apprentice. He knows if Robert Mueller, who is respected by a lot of people, including me, if he testifies and adds nuance, meat, and description to the footnotes, the sentences, the phraseology in that report, Donald Trump knows that that could be extremely explosive. And here's what it'll cause the American people to do. They will then read the report. I think there was a poll out that 5% to 10% of the American public has not even read or only read the report. The other 90% has not. People are going to read that report. And if you read that report, Volume 1 and especially Volume 2, you conclude one thing. This is not how the President of the United States should act.
Well, let me go back to Mueller testifying because, let's remember that Trump completely said time and time again that this report totally exonerated him.
Right.
But I think to your point, there's sort of another nuance that the AP story points out. Trump has long known the power of televised images and feared that Americans would be captivated by seeing and hearing Mueller, who has not spoken publicly since being named special counsel. He was virtually a ghost during the entire time of this investigation. And I wonder, and this is something else that the
Sure.
AP article raised, is Trump worried about a repeat of Michael Cohen's testimony back in February? I mean, do you think that would be comparable? So many people watching, so many people finding that witness credible.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. This could be Michael Cohen 2 times 3, because Michael Cohen, we all know, had problems, okay, putting it mildly. He pleaded guilty to perjury, lying, and tax fraud, and then some people say he continued that lying before the committee. But also, Donald Trump remembers Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, and after her testimony, Brett Kavanaugh's nomination was hanging in the balance. And so he knows the power of live television and how that can impact the poll numbers and the perceptions of the American people. And he's afraid that it possibly could be a game changer. And this is the other point, Chris. He's put out a narrative, no collusion, no obstruction. If Robert Mueller testifies, you can guarantee he's going to shoot the no collusion and the no obstruction canards and put 2 holes in their heads.
But as you just said, if he testifies, I mean, the thing is that at least right now, Mueller still works for the Justice Department. And Bill Barr's his boss. He can say you can't testify. I mean, so you've got Bill Barr, who can say you can't testify. He's facing contempt charges from congressional Democrats who are the ones who want to hear from Mueller. I don't know. Is that a little bit of a conflict there?
Well, here's the thing, Chris. You could have a congressional subpoena issued for the testimony of Robert Mueller, and the Congress rightly could argue that executive privilege is trumped for several reasons. One is the easy one. There's a waiver, and that one is a slam dunk in my view. 2, the crime fraud exception. He's investigating what he may believe, Robert Mueller, is conduct that takes it outside of the privilege. And the third reason is the privilege is qualified. If there's a public interest that is greater than the president's need for confidential communications, Congress wins and the public wins.
Well, it will be fascinating to see, and I think that there is a parallel with the way this testimony will be watched with John Dean, which was, I remember vividly, I was in high school. It was riveting. Gene Rossi, thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.